Okay, we're back. It is COMP125, and it is summer of 2016. We are client-side web development, lesson 2, or week 2, part 1 of our broadcast. Last week was really an intro. We kind of talked about a bunch of different technologies. The big ones were GitHub, we talked about a lot, and Azure. Those are the two extra things you kind of picked up last day. Is it part of our program? No, it doesn't have to be. I'm making it part of our course here when we do things together, because I want to give you as much kind of realistic tools as possible in order for you to be a good web developer. So that's why we're doing that. So I want to talk about a couple of things today. One, I want to go over some of the stuff we didn't have a chance to go over last week with week 1 PowerPoint. Get into weeks 2 PowerPoint, which I've already put up online for you guys as well. I want to talk about assignment number 1, which I've handed out now. It's on up on Blackboard. It's up on eCentennial. I always say Blackboard. Anyways, and we'll talk about how to do that, what I'm expecting from you guys in detail. So we'll go over the assignment in detail. And then I also want to remind you that Wednesday we'll have a quick quiz first thing when we come in, so please be on time, as I will be starting it right exactly at the time where we start off. You'll have 10 minutes approximately to finish it off. It'll be 5 again to 7 questions from a pool of about 20. I'm guessing I'll probably make a pool of 20 questions, and then you'll get some random questions fired your way from that pool. And it'll be all the stuff we've basically talked about in class, some stuff on your PowerPoint presentations, those kind of things. I won't make it difficult, but I'll be focusing on things like we talked about last day, like progressive enhancement. What's progressive enhancement? I talked about this last day as a topic. If you guys don't know what that is, let's pull that up so you guys can have it recorded here on the video, because I will be talking about it. So if I go progressive enhancement, that's what I'm talking about. So again, it says a strategy for web design that emphasizes accessibility, semantic HTML markup, and external style sheet and scripting technologies. The idea here that I'm talking about is the 3 tiers of progressive enhancement, which are your structure, your presentation layer, and your behavior layer, okay? What we do in this class is behavior. It's all we're trying to build up the script, your knowledge of JavaScript, so you can build up the behavior layer to give your web applications functionality. That's the idea here, okay? So remember what I talked about before, just as a review from last week when we got together. We don't want to add in JavaScript unless it's absolutely necessary, right? We want to add in JavaScript where it makes sense, right? Because JavaScript is going to slow things down for us, right? It's funny enough, I have this infographic I'm going to probably share with you, probably a little bit next day if I have time, but it's interesting, some of the stuff that I was reading up on. There's an infographic actually up on Instagram, and they talk about a couple things here. That's very interesting indeed. Let's see if I can read it to you guys, right? As opposed to showing it to you. So one of the things they have that they talk about on Instagram is over 3 billion Google searches are done in a day, right? 3 billion Google searches, right? But the problem is, what ends up happening is if something doesn't go right, if people don't get the right response in a few seconds, they abandon the page, the search, the stuff. It's really funny how we're kind of geared up. So here's a statistic for you. 1 in 4 people abandon a web page that takes more than 4 seconds to load. More than 4 seconds, you're like, nah, I'm not going to go to that site. Something's wrong, right? 1 in 4 people. Here's another one. 50% of mobile users abandon a page if it doesn't load in 10 seconds. So 10 seconds, you're gone. That's it's too long for you, 10 seconds, right? 10 seconds is like, your lifetime here. Here's one. In the US, 25% of mobile web users browse only on their phones. Okay, so if you're on your phone, they don't use any kind of desktop or anything else, right? So if it's not compatible with mobile, it's gone. So think about the importance of doing things mobile compatible, which we're going to be talking about in this course a little bit. Don't forget about shopping. Here it is. Amazon.com makes about $67 million in sales each day. 67 million a day, right? In Amazon, right? It could potentially lose up to 1.6 billion per year because of a 1-second web page delay. because if it delays, right, a few seconds, you're going to abandon your purchase. You might change your mind, right? They don't want you to change your mind, so they make make it as quick as possible. That's why Amazon Web Services is the #1 cloud provider in the world right now, right? More than Microsoft and more than Google, right? So it's interesting what the kind of stuff that they talk about, right? How about even in the real world, right? If you were to line up for a restaurant, if you went to a restaurant today, it says half. If you went to a restaurant, it says in a survey conducted by the USA Today, right? The majority of Americans, listen to this, would not wait in line longer than 15 minutes, right? If you went to a restaurant, if you went more than 15 minutes, you'd go home, right? Or go somewhere else, right? And half would not return to an establishment that kept them waiting. So if you were waiting at all in line, you would say, forget this. You make me wait, I'm out of here, right? Why am I telling you all this stuff? Because JavaScript, right? It can add time to load your page, right? So remember, the things that load page quickly is good structured semantic code, HTML5, to frame your content, right? If your content takes too long to load, right? We talked about this, right? It could potentially cost Amazon millions, right? Or whatever it's going to be. So imagine if you're the next Amazon, you want to load your page quickly, and where there's two types of responsiveness. Responsive web design, which means that your content is going to reflow into a smaller screen. That's responsive web design. And then there's responsive, which means your page is quick, right? It's quick, and it's going to come up when you call it. And if you make any changes, if you click on a button, it's going to respond to you really fast. There's two types of responsivenesses, right? So the idea here is with progressive enhancement, that's why I'm talking about this a couple times now, is because if you did your good HTML markup, which makes sense, your CSS, you do good CSS, because remember, CSS is lighter weight than JavaScript, right? You can do a lot of stuff with CSS. And there's a great site to kind of demonstrate this. If I was to go to, I don't know if you guys have seen this, you might have seen this already through Professor Filati, CSS Zen Garden. You guys have seen this one? CSS Zen Garden is a famous site, I would say. It uses just CSS to spin the content into different design patterns. Okay, so if you notice here, it looks like this. Look at the content, and if I click on another one, right, it's the same content with a different design, right? And it's just changing the CSS. The markup is identical, pretty much, right? If I click another one, you can see that there's a different design, same content, right? So the idea here is, and this is why I recommend taking a look at these things, is because we can do a lot with CSS that we don't have to do. We have nothing to do with JavaScript at all, right? So just going back to that. I just wanted to point it out to you so that way you don't think that there's it's the only thing that's out there, right? Like that there's we can only use JavaScript to give my site behavior. It's not true. You can do a lot of stuff with CSS. Let me just look at another one here for you. There's another one. That's the one we looked at before. So one more time. How about this one? A robot named Jimmy. There we go. So you can see that it's the same content, but lots of interesting stuff you can do with just CSS. No JavaScript, pretty much, right? I think these are the things to look at, guys and girls. I think you have to look at these ideas here. So when we add JavaScript, imagine if you had your HTML and CSS to the point where it's that good, and you add JavaScript to enhance what you've got already, right? That's what we want to use JavaScript for. And also to make a difference, or turn our website from a website into a web application, which is what we're going to be doing today, right? We're going to be starting to talk more and more about JavaScript functionality, right? And to turn our website into a web application. I've given you from last week just a reminder, most of the marks are in for your Lab 1, by the way, for people who handed it in. There are some people who didn't hand it in, right? So, I mean, there's nothing I can do for those people, but for the people that handed it in, right, your marks it in, and most people got 2 out of 2. I mean, if I ask you to do something, and if I say there's 2 things I want you to do, or whatever, or what I've asked you to do for this time was a GitHub link and some kind of link to a cloud provider, or I even accepted the school web server as an option, right? Like I said, if you provided those 2 links, you got 2 out of 2. I wasn't gonna, I'm not gonna go sit there and go, you know what, Tatiana, I'm gonna give you only 1.8 because I don't want to give you perfect. Why? You did what I asked you to do, you're gonna get 2 out of 2, right? It's gonna be the same thing for my assignments. When I go to my assignments and I've asked you to do, now, let's say this particular assignment, if you look here, there's 50 points I've given you for this assignment. 50 points, not 50%, 50 points. 50 points that I'm gonna mark, right? 50 little things I'm gonna look at, right? 50 sounds like a lot. Really, it's not, right? But if I look at this thing and I sit there, if you do the 50 things I've asked you to do, you're gonna get 100%. It's very simple. I'm not gonna sit there and go like, well, I can't give her 100% because my mark average is gonna be off. I'm not gonna bell curve anything in this class. If you guys all get 100%, woohoo, did a great job, right? I don't care. Typically it doesn't happen, right? But only because people don't hand things in, or there might be something small they didn't do, or if they didn't do so well on a quiz or something else. That, it's no one's perfect, but it's okay. I wouldn't be perfect either, chances are, if I was to answer stuff, if I was doing a course, right? So I understand that. But if you guys hand in what I asked you to do, you're gonna get perfect. Let's talk about this this assignment 1 before I go further. So this is due June 3rd. You got a couple weeks and a bit to get this done. This is not a big assignment, guys, even though it's marked 15% of your final mark. It's really not that big. And here's what I want you to do. Make 3 pages, right? It's all about you. This assignment is your mini portfolio. If you don't have a mini portfolio already, this is a great start for you. If you have a mini portfolio, don't use it. I want you to use this one. This is a new assignment. Please don't use someone else's work or previous work from somewhere else to make your mini portfolio. You could use the content. Let's say if you already have content because you've already created a portfolio site before and you want to use the content to respin on this one, as long as it meets my criteria and it's hosted the way I want it hosted, and you've got a GitHub, repository and everything else. I mean, the content, what am I going to say? It's about you. How is that going to change, right? Somehow, you're not going to be you're going to go from, I don't know, a person A to a kind of person B. You can't be. It's going to be you, right? So if you've already written about yourself, that's okay, right? So let's talk about this a little bit. So here's the instructions. And this is how I do my assignments. You'll see all my assignments kind of look like this, right? You're going to have a section like, part 1. And there'll be, part 1A, B, C, D, right? So part 1 has 14 marks for UI. So that's your user interface. And 14 marks for your functionality, like, how things work, right? So the first page, you're going to make a few pages. A bio page, a contact page, and a projects page. Okay, those are the 3 pages that I want you to make. So multi-page website. Okay, that's what I want you to do. I want you to include a personal logo. So when I say logo, I mean it could be something that represents you. Please don't steal someone else's logo and make it your own. I want you to think about this as your signet ring, your signature, whoop, that you kind of stamp on your documents. And the reason why is every time we do something together, an assignment together, I'm going to ask you to do some kind of, put your logo on it, like your stamp. Doesn't matter if you have to be in this course, another course, whatever we do together, make something that represents you. It could be like a simple graphic, or it could be your initials, like let's say my initials, TT, right? I can make them TT, like some kind of weird circle with T and T in there. It takes 2 seconds to make. Guys, and girls, don't be crazy about being creative here. If you're not artists, it's okay, right? But it's got to represent you. Okay, a simple logo. I'm paying you for it too. You're going to get marks for it, right? A recent image of you is required, and a short paragraph that outlines your personal mission. That's all on the bio, right? So who are you? And when I say a personal image of you, make sure that your image isn't skewed. Eh? It's not like, or it doesn't look like that, right? It's got to look like proportional to you. So one of the biggest problems that young web developers have is they get a picture of themselves and they say, okay, my picture is proportioned in a rectangle, but I'm going to squash it into a square, right? So you're like, it just doesn't make any sense, right? Please don't do that. Try and keep your picture proportional. If you need to, take another picture, right? It's not like a big deal. Everyone has a camera these days in their pockets, pretty much, right? So do what you have to do. Sometimes people have concerns. They're like, hey, do I really have to put my picture on my page? I take terrible pictures. Yeah, you really have to put your picture on your page. Yeah, it's important that you do, right? And do I really have to put my personal information on my contact page? Yes, you really have to put your personal information. This is a portfolio site, so people can contact you. If you go to an interview tomorrow or for co-op or whatever, You say, hey, look, here's my portfolio page, right? I got a portfolio page that I made, right? Here it is. So yes, it's got to be real. So that's what's on your contact page. On your contact page is about contacting you. Let's go back to your bio page for a second. So all the text on the page should come from, here's the JavaScript, from string variables in your app.js file. So the content is not something that you're going to put into your HTML. Your HTML is we're going to talk about how to do that. You're going to inject the content from your JavaScript. This is the exercise here. Is it realistic in real life? No. It's not realistic to take all paragraphs of data and inject it into your page like this, right, from JavaScript. But it gives you an idea of how to do it. Remember, we're going to be doing input and output from JavaScript, right? So this is what this exercise is all about, right? A contact page. The contact page is a short form that asks the user for their contact information. It's a form, okay? You have to make a form there. Some people, when I've done this before, they're like, hey, here's my contact information. No, 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 no. You also have to make a form. When the user clicks on the submit button, the form will take the user back to the bio page. It's going to redirect you back to your first page, or landing page, if you will. The form does not have to work for this assignment. Okay? You don't have to make the form work. So if it doesn't spit out anything, it doesn't email anybody, it doesn't email you, it's okay. We'll fix that later on, yeah. Everything has to be done in JavaScript, yeah. And you can't use PHP, no PHP for this assignment, okay? No PHP, no other technologies. HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Please don't hand me anything else. You won't get a mark for it, okay? C, a project page. Include details, text, and images of 3 of your favorite projects. Let's say you have some project you've done in other classes, an assignment you're really proud of. Or maybe it's not a project that you did in class, you have something that you'd like to do, a hobby. You like to do, or I don't know, you like horseback riding. You know, you like to ride on the horse, right? And so just put a picture of yourself, right? Sorry, am I making that? That's bad. Make you know, ride on the horse. Maybe you like to fight, with swords or something. And part time, I don't know, you'd like to role play or something like that with swords and shields, right? Right. Take a picture of yourself, fighting with swords and shields. I don't know. Something that makes it about your projects, things that you've worked on, that makes it more interesting. Please don't leave this blank. Some people have left this blank in the past because they say, I have no favorite projects. Right? Well, but you're selling yourself here. This is your portfolio. You're selling yourself, right? A nav bar, right? Because you have to have some kind of navigation to go from page 1 to page 2 to page 3. It's got to have some navigation. Sometimes, people say, well, do I have to have my nav bar at the top of the page? Well, you don't have to have it there. You can have it on the side nav. You can have it somewhere else. Typically, we have it on the top. That's how we do it. But, you can be creative. I want you to be creative. This is the second assignment we're doing together. The first one was kind of like a little lab to get your feet wet. This one is almost like I'm getting to know you, you're getting to know me in terms of real marketing. Also, I want to see how creative you can be, and this is your portfolio. It belongs to you, right?
So what's the best way of positioning the nav bar?
It really depends is the answer. And I'll show you some examples about that. So the question was, what's the best way of positioning the nav bar? There is no best way. It really depends on what you want to accomplish, what your site's about, what problem you want to solve. That's why when we create our pages, that's what it covers. So typically, like I said, from a typical page, a common page, an average page, it's top. Okay, that's part 1, A, B, C, D. Anyone have any questions about this part? Pretty straightforward.
What's that 14 marks GUI, GUI, and 14 marks?
UI is your user interface, graphic user interface, and 14 marks for functionality. How functional your page, what I've asked you to do. And it tells you, if you notice each line, like for contact page, it says 3 marks for UI and 3 marks for functionality based on what I've asked you to do, okay? That's why I break down the marks. So you can see where the heavier marks are. An example of this would be your bio page has 8 marks and your project page has 8 marks, but your contact page has only 6 marks. All right, as an example. Okay, let's keep going. 2, your site will be organized into the following structure. God, this is something you've never seen before. A contents folder, a scripts folder. I did this last week. And an assets folder. If you just do those 3 folders and you put files in the right places, 6 marks. That's for site structure right there, right? Include Bootstrap in your framework for 2 marks. We'll talk about Bootstrap. And Font Awesome for 2 marks. We'll talk about those 2 things you have. We haven't talked about that yet, okay? So that's for 10 marks, how to structure your page, your site. Has to be structured in a certain way. Okay. One thing that I didn't include in here, which I also want you to remember, is color scheme. All right. I don't want you to make it black and white. Okay. Or blue and white. I want you to kind of think about a color scheme. I'll point you to the right, some websites that can help you. All right. Internal documentation. This is another section, section 3. Internal documentation does not mean make a document. Okay. It means comments. That's what it means. We'll talk about a comment style for everything today as well. When I comment my stuff today, you're going to see some special commenting style, right, for the first time ever. And I want you to follow that comment style as we move throughout the course, right? So we'll talk about that a little bit. So A, make sure your comment header has, you know, your CSS and JavaScript files. Each one of them have things like your file name, your author's name, website name, file description for each of your files, right? So don't leave those out. This is worth 2 marks, right? Ensure you include section headers for all your HTML structure, CSS style sections, and JavaScript functions. Talk about those. Ensure you include, you know, all your code uses contextual variable names. So don't make a variable name like I or J or B, you know, just because you feel like it, right? Make sure that the name makes sense, right? And ensure you include inline comments where it's appropriate. Don't over comment. I don't want you to comment every single line when it doesn't meet where you don't need it. That's bad too, right? And then the final section you've already done last week, right? You've already done a lab on this, is put your stuff on GitHub and share your files on Azure, right? Or another cloud provider, or on the school server if you really are desperate and you can't get Azure working. But I highly recommend that you use Azure because it's the best way to do it. Okay, so those are the marks, and 8 marks for that. So here's your rubric if you think about this, and I've also got the rubric I think tied into your assignment. So you can see where the breakdown of all the marks are for a total of 50 marks. Now this assignment's out of 15%, right? So 50 marks, it's not 1 mark, 1%, right? So just keep that in mind. There's also a little bit of a disclaimer down here that late submissions is 20% deducted for each day late. So that means like late today, if it's due today, tomorrow it's out of 80. Next day it's out of 60. Next day it's out of 40. Eventually it's not even worth out of anything, right? Also external code. Please do not use anybody else's code. That's what this means. If you're going to use something to do a special effect or something that you want to try out, let me know. I'll approve it or not, right? Please don't do it and say, well, I did it because it looks cool and I thought you would like it. No, don't do that here. This is a beginning JavaScript course. I want you to vet things with me. So send me an email saying, what do you think? I want to use this site for this thing. And if I say yes, go ahead. If I say no, it's a no, right? And that means you won't get marked for it. Like your assignment will come in 0. You don't want that. Yes? Yes, since I'm requiring it, yes, you need to do that. If I say it in the assignment that you need it, then you can use it, right? Like I wouldn't make it so that I put it. You need Bootstrap and Font Awesome, but you can't use them. I don't know, how does that work, right? So the same thing. Yes, you would, because it's not a CSS course. I'm not trying to make you relearn CSS. It's not a design course where I'm going to teach you design. It's not about that. It's all about you know, getting your JavaScript functionality going. And also, I want you to also think about this. This assignment number 1 is an assignment we're going to build on. Okay, we're going to use this assignment over and over again as we move forward in the course, right? So it's really important that you get this one done. Okay, so I might have another assignment that says, do this to your portfolio assignment, right? Change it this way, or add this functionality, or take away this thing, or move it like this. And you need something to work with. So this is the first one we're going to work with. So it's more of a real life example as opposed to me giving you assignments that make no sense. Like just build a calculator, right? You know, what is that? How's that going to help you, right? But this one will help you. If you build a portfolio website, you can use this for your interviews, right? And it'll give you a real world example of it'll motivate you to do something about you, right? Because a lot of times, this is the thing too, we do a lot of things for other people, but we leave ourselves, we don't do anything for ourselves at all, right? Like if I asked you today, how many people have resumes ready to go? How many people? If I was to give me a resume, right? How many people are ready to go? Some people aren't ready, right? Some people aren't ready. And the reason for that is because, you know what? You're busy. Everyone's a busy person, right? You're busy people. You can't get your resume done. Well, imagine that. Now, show me your website. Your website. Right? Any questions about assignment number 1? This is due June 3rd. So we're talking about 2.5 weeks approximately. Yes?
So while I was pushing my files on GitHub, it doesn't push one of the folders.
Is this specific to assignment 1? What you're asking me?
Yes.
How's it specific to assignment 1?
So you said make 2 and 3 folders content and other 2 folders assessed and one other
Yes.
script folder.
Yes.
So while I was pushing these files to GitHub and my previous assignment,
Yes.
it didn't push assessed folder to GitHub.
Okay, that's a good question, actually. So it didn't put it, I'm sorry, your name again? Satnam? So we have a gentleman here, he's asked me about, he says, look, I pushed my stuff up to GitHub. I have my content, my structure last week was content, scripts, and assets. But when I pushed it to GitHub, assets didn't go up. How come? Well, the answer is, if there's nothing inside your folder, it doesn't go up. If the folder's empty, it's not going to go up to GitHub. Only goes up when there's something inside, right? Even if you structure it locally, it's not going to create a space on GitHub remotely unless there's something to put up. Okay, so any other questions related to assignment number 1? So again, due June 3rd. You have a bit of a rubric here, and there's also should be one online that I created today as well that you can that'll help you take a look at how it goes. And I'll be marking you just like this, right? How about bonus marks? Will I give you bonus marks if you do extra work? Absolutely, right? These are what I've given you here, guys and girls, is the bare minimum that I request from you, right? So if you add extra stuff, if you give me more than 2, 3 pages, you make it 5 pages, and you make it so it's realistic. Like say, for example, you say, I want to do projects. I also want to do services because I offer some services to my clients. I want to be able to do web design. I do, I also do, I'm a maker. So I do stuff with, Internet of Things, IoT. I do other things, other stuff that you want to offer. This is your portfolio. You're making your own, right? If you just give me the bare minimum that I'm asking for, you're going to get whatever marks whatever you give me, right? But if you make it your own, that's, that's okay. It's good too. You'll get bonus marks on that. And the other place you'll get marked on is, let's say, for example, someone says, hey, Tom, can I, instead of making 3 pages, can I make it 1 long page, a single page application with 3 sections? When I click on my links on the top, navigation, it takes me to that section. Okay. Because you're satisfying my requirements. I have a bio section page. I have a contact section page. So it has to have a form. Everything has to be there that I've asked for. And I have a project page, right? Section, whatever you want to call it, right? But it's all one big single page application. It's a very common thing these days to make a SPA, single page application, right? So you can do that too. There's a lot of creativity. I'm giving you a lot of room for creativity with this one. Please don't just say, he's asked me for ABC, so I'm going to give him ABC, right? This is for you. This is your portfolio site. Other than a little piece here, the main functionality is right here. String variables in your app.js to kind of pump out your data, your content. That's it. Right. The rest is CSS and HTML and structure, GitHub, Visual Studio Code, Visual Studio, Microsoft Azure, all the things that we talked about in Lab 1, plus a few other things we're talking about. I'm going to close this off for now. Let's take a look at some other things that can help you out. Okay. And I want to talk about a couple things like material design. Okay. Because there's some places you can get some colors to choose for your website. I usually use this for Android, actually. When I do Android programming, I use this stuff here. But what you can do is if you go to materialpalette.com, this is one, and you want to choose your colors, let's say. Let's say, for example, you like a couple colors. You pick a couple colors here, like, I don't know, indigo and blue, right? What it does is it gives you a color palette on the bottom, right, for indigo and blue. And this is what you talked about, your dark primary color, some kind of primary color, an accent color, different things for this one. This is really cool, and you can actually download your palette, and it'll give you all your details, right, how to make this work, right? Like I said to you before, colors are important in a website, right? So choose your colors wisely. Please don't choose yellow and some weird orange. I don't know. I mean, that could look really tough too. Like, here, I'll give you an example of that. Yellow and orange. Woo! It's not bad, right? I mean, it stands out a little bit, but see where the white text is a little bit hard to read? I'm going to be looking at those things, eh? If I can't read your content, it's like, that's bad, right? I need to be able to see what you're saying. Also, if it's too dark, like for example, let's say, notice that I have, this, my text color is white here in this particular example, and I've got some other colors here. What if I tried something else? If I went to, I don't know, brown and, I don't know, red, right? I don't know why I would do that. But if you notice that, what if this was black, this text color over here? That would be bad. I couldn't see it. Brown and black, It's too, you know, there's not enough contrast. So, I mean, if it's not legible, you're going to lose marks. Like, that's just simple stuff. If I can't see it, you know, that's part of your UI, right? It has to be legible. I got to be able to see your typography and everything else. And if you look at the rubric, it says proper typography, appropriate colors and stuff. This is one. The other one that's really popular is the Adobe site, right? So color.adobe.com is what I think it's called. Looks like this, right? Actually, it's again, you can go on here to grab some stuff. There's different rules here. For example, let's say I want to make it so that it's shades, like I have here, but I want to make it so it's shades of blue, right? Down here, you see the hexadecimal values for all your colors. So you can kind of create a nice, you know, palette with some accent colors that you're going to choose from here. Or if you want to make it complementary, it'll do that too. So for example, well, I want to make it so that, you know, Christmas colors, I don't know, red and green, right? If you want to do that kind of thing. I wouldn't do this, but maybe the site's more green, like dark green, and you've got an accent color, which is this kind of red. That's okay. That might look okay, right? And there's other schemes here as well, like for example, monochromatic, where it's all green, you know, or all blue. If I took it like this one, you can actually specify, you know, your blue colors. Blue and gray is very, you know, institutional. You know, you see this in a lot of banks, you know, that kind of stuff, or, you know, enterprise companies, those kind of things. A lot of blues and grays. Sometimes, you know, you can get creative by pulling this over to this side, making it purples and grays, or whatever. A little bit red and gray. Red's a little bit angry. You know, I'm not saying that you shouldn't do reds, but depending on what your personality is like, I'm not sure that I would choose red all the time. This is okay. It's a nice color too, and you can even mix some nice with some greens. Just don't make it so it's too close to the yellow, right? I mean, that would be a little bit, I don't know, difficult to look at for a while, right? So think about the colors. You can choose some nice color schemes here so that they balance. Okay, so I'll give you a couple of color options here as well. Okay. One more site, and then we'll get into the heart and bones of everything, right, that we want to talk about today. One I always like to look at is called the awards site, AWWW, right? And if I look at awards.com, right, which is where I want to go, they actually, what they do is they take websites and they rate them. Top web developers, they kind of, you know, you submit your website to these guys and they give you a rating, and they rate you according to design, usability, creativity, and context, right? Content. So an example of this is this one, Henge. I don't know what this is, but I'll give you this octagonal table thing, right? We're going to look at this site. They've rated this site, you know, a bunch of 7s. Again, no 8s, but the highest mark being around content. So really good content. Maybe the lowest mark here would be usability and creativity, a little bit lower, but still in the high 7s, which makes the site pretty good, right? If we were to look at this site to see what it really looks like, right? This is a design furniture. You can see what the site is. Okay. Now, guys and girls, I don't want you to think that, this is pretty slow. I don't want you to think that, you know, the site you see here, the sites you see here is what I want you to do, all right? I don't expect that at all, right? But if you notice, if I scroll down, as I scroll down, this is an effect of parallax scrolling. See if I go down, or continuous scrolling site. See how the words move up, but the picture is a little bit slower and moving up than the words. That's kind of parallax scrolling, right? That's the effect that we talk about. As I scroll, things pop in and out of the screen. That's very typical these days, very common theme. You're going to see this as something that's over the last year or so that people do. And at the bottom, they have a kind of an area where there's, you know, more content. As I hover over, I see these content effects here, that kind of stuff. And I also have this side menu, a menu bar, that I can get all the navigation. You asked me about navigation. There's some different navigation theme right there, right? So something totally different than what you normally would see. There's no navigation on the top in this one. There's just the hamburger, right? This little hamburger thing. And I'm sure that a lot of the most modern sites now are responsive. So if I change my viewport size, you can see that it responds with responsive web design techniques and reflows the content so that it fits onto a smaller screen size, right? So if I look at this, you can see that it still fits. Even on my cell phone, it probably will work pretty good. That's one. Let's look at one more of these, and then we'll, just to give you an idea of what it looks. So let's say I wanted to find something for portfolios, because you're making a portfolio site. So I type in portfolio here. Sometimes you might see something that you like, right? So, you can see that there's a, here is a Charlie, someone or another, a senior graphic designer. He submitted his site as a portfolio. So let's look at this one. And his site got rated for design 8. That's good. That's high for design. But usability and creativity. Usability is lower. So that's kind of his. So it's not really, they don't rank it as that usable. But he's getting high rankings for content and creativity and so on. Let's take a look at this one, right? Again, this is just some examples. So this is this guy, right? Where's his navigation? You asked me navigation. Well, there's an about. It's all about him, right? Here's contact down the bottom left, right? I'm not sure if I agree with that, and I think this is where he lost usability points, right? Because I have to search around for his, his content, right? And also look at this. He's got this snapcard.io, right? And if you look at what, I don't know what this is, but I want to click onto it because that's just the way I am, right? So just that's his logo, right? So that's his site. If I click about, maybe we'll get some more information about him, right? And he looks like this guy's from the Czech Republic, right? And as I look down, it talks about him, right? What things he's worked on, some projects. And as I scroll down, you can see how it goes from one color and it goes into a different color, giving more interest. As you scroll down, it changes color more. This could be done with CSS. It could also be done with JavaScript. And it even gives us this little map that's embedded here. I'm not sure if I agree with this one. I probably wouldn't, do this a little bit odd compared to everything else he's getting here. That's just me, right? And the same thing goes on with his contact information. I was going to contact him, how would I contact him? He's going to pull up my email. All right. That's weird. That's something to me that I wouldn't do, right? I don't agree with kind of thing. So let's just click that, right? That's just me. I don't think contact, when you click on the contact thing, that it should come up like that. That's just, I don't agree with it. Nowadays, that's very old school as a contact link to bring up your email, mail to, whatever it's going to be. Don't agree. If I scroll down, you can see that as I scroll down, I see a few of his projects. Like here's Yella. Maybe that's one thing he worked on, right? And you can see that he's got his projects laid out here. And as I scroll down, some more content pumps into the picture, right? So if I just kind of move down, I can see the content appear, right? So interesting ways of doing things. He's done what it says an iOS app where he did kind of his keyboard design or whatever he was doing. That's neat. And this is a great example of a good project that he's worked on, right? Guys and girls, I'm not going to limit you just to this guy's work. Please take a look at the award site. There's tons and tons and tons of examples. And if you don't know how to do something, you can always look it up. You can always go, how did they do that, right? What technique did they use to do that? What JavaScript did they use? Maybe you can't do it today, right? That's okay. And maybe you want to take some elements of things you see because it's successful. If these guys get ranked in the 7s and 8s, you know that they're okay, right? So chances are I'm going to like what you put out, right? What you give me. Try not to give me something that's very too simple. If you just give me like this, I want to see images. I mean, nowadays, okay, I want to look at one more thing because I'm just, I love the award site, because it gives us more stuff, right? Let me look at one. Something else that's not related. Here, this is another one. Yeah, this guy here. Pretty good usability and stuff. Okay, let's see what this is about. Okay, here's a portfolio type site. I'm a digital product designer and design director hailing from Austria, living in Berlin. Right, here he is. As I scroll, this is very common. Look how this is giving me functionality here, right? And here's my jam. My jam means, what he works on, what he's about, right? It's interesting. And as I will go down, you can see that he's got a bit of a mission statement here. All I ever wanted was to design CD artworks for bands. And then the iPhone came out. That's a neat thing. It talks about him. Not a lot of text here. I don't have to see like a story. Don't give me a story, guys, right? This is nice. This is good. It's big, bold text that takes up the entire page, but it talks about this person. And just this one statement talks about what this person's about, right? Portfolio. With a bit of a graphic at the bottom, right? To separate the boredom, right? He's adding a graphic at the end, almost like a period, right? Da-da-da-da, and then a period, some little artwork, right? And then that's kind of a common style. I'm sure we're going to see it over and over again. Look, it comes up over and over again. And he talks about a couple things here, right? His ideas about almost like a minor little blog about what he's about. This is good if you guys could put something like this together, right? Do I expect it to, and he's got also some social media. Social media is always good to kind of link into. Hey, by the way, just on social media, I'm talking about web design a little bit here too. Okay? Please, I would say monitor, go look at your Facebook and Twitter pages, Instagrams, and make sure you don't see a lot of this, all right? Or some other weird pictures of yourself, you know, doing stuff. When an agency comes to look for you to hire you to do whatever, or a person is going to interview you, they're going to look you up. They're going to Google you. So always Google yourself. Try and find out, you know, can you find yourself? And if you do you see some really weird pictures or something wrong about what they've said? You don't want anything negative to come up. Also, you want to make sure your LinkedIn page matches your resume, right? You don't want like your LinkedIn page to say one thing and your resume to say something else. Make sure these are common, you know, basics, right, that I'd like to, you know, kind of talk about. Let's talk about navigation. So if I click on this little hamburger, it looks like there's more navigation, and you can see that he's talks about him, you know, my comfort, you know, different things. He's got some other projects that he's worked on. He's obviously worked on some graphics for iPhones and some other sites. So very interesting, you know, website. Is it perfect? No, but it's really neat, and you know what? It talks really about him, right? So you know what he's about. This is about you, so make sure this talks about you. Okay, this isn't talking about somebody else. Don't put your brother, sisters, mother's, uncle on this thing. This is for you. All right. Okay, enough about this stuff. Let's get to the meat and bones of JavaScript today. Any questions about assignment 1 other than what I've talked about? Assignment 1, again, be a little bit creative. Think about what you want to put on the page. It represents you, and it's using a little bit of JavaScript just to inject content onto the page as opposed to you typing into your HTML. On that, let's bring up Visual Studio Code for a second, and also Visual Studio. We're going to launch Visual Studio. For those people who are using Visual Studio, you can create the project. We're going to kind of do this a couple places. We're doing both sides, both on Visual Studio and on Visual Studio Code. I'll work kind of at the same time today. But I want to talk about this stuff we're going to be working on. And for us, because of this week, we're working on this new project. I'm going to right-click and make a new folder here that I'm going to be working with called Lesson 2, right? So it's going to be COMP125 Lesson 2. There we go. And I'm going to drag and drop this one for Visual Studio Code, VS Code. I drag and drop this into the blank space over here. Even if there's something else in here, I can just drag and drop this in, and we're going to start over again like this, right? For the Visual Studio people, right, we're going to click New Project, right? If you're a Visual Studio person, New Project. And here's what I want you to do for this one. Make sure you click ASP.NET under Visual C# Web. Choose ASP.NET Web Application, and then make sure it saves it in the right location. I'm gonna put yours. Well, for now, I'll leave it where it is. But let's say I'm gonna make a new application called COMP125 Lesson 2, right? Put it together here, and you can see that it's going web, and I'm kind of talking about what the lesson's called. And down here, you can see that I've clicked on both the directory for the solution as well as my Git repositories clicked. If this isn't clicked and it says add to source control, that's okay. When you do this the first time, it'll ask you which source control you want to use, Team Foundation Server or Git. You choose Git, and there's going to be another little checkbox that says you want to use Git for your default source provider. Okay, click OK. It's going to kind of create a, I want you to click empty, not anything else, any other kind of template, right? And click, make sure that there's no host in the cloud, no unit tests or anything else. And no, you don't want to do any kind of, any other check marks here. Everything else should be unchecked. I launch a new project. It's going to be empty project here. Or do things at the same time. I'm going to go much faster today than I did on last week because I got two things to balance. I'm going to do both projects at the same time. All right, so you can see both. While this is kicking off, let's go back to this side, and I want to create some folders. I want to make my first folder just to satisfy your assignment requirements, assets. The next one is going to be, I'm going to do it all at once, and you're going to see there's going to be some problems with my code. Assets, content, what's my problem? And I'm going to do another one, scripts. Can you see a problem? Yeah, there's one inside the other one. So I just kept hitting this button over and over again. This isn't what I want. I want these to be on the root of the web project, which is going to look like this. So assets, content, and scripts. Always get those things going. All right. On the right, let's do the same thing with Visual Studio itself. I'm going to click on my project and go add, right, new folder, and we'll do the same thing, assets. I'm going to right click on my project and go add new folder, content. I'm going to click on my project, add new folder, scripts. So now we're at the same level on both sides. Right? So assets, content, and scripts. Assets, content, and scripts, both sides. Okay? Let's add a HTML page for this one. I'm going to click away down here and click this little button right here for my new HTML page. I'm going to say index.html. Right? There we go. Index.html. On the right side, I'll do the same thing. I'm going to go to my project, right click, add. And there's two options. If the HTML page doesn't appear here, you can choose this one, or you can go to new item for Visual Studio, and you can choose, when it comes up, HTML page. Either way is good. I'm just going to pick this way this time and go index. And it's going to make a new blank page for us. Okay, when it eventually does it for me because I'm virtualizing, right? Meanwhile, while this is doing that, I'm going to skip back here and actually do the page. Let's do it again from scratch. Doc type. Right? Is HTML. Here's my shorthand for those people who remember the shorthand. Emmet is what we're using here. It's built into Visual Studio Code. HTML. Inside my HTML, I'm going to open my brackets. I'm going to have a head tag. Inside my head tag, I'm going to have a title tag. Plus, I'm going to have a body tag. Oops. Inside my body tag, I'm going to have an H1 tag with the words "Hello World," right? Just because. And then I'll wait till you guys are caught up, right? Are you guys good? Press tab. If I press tab, the tab button, bam, I got this, right? Takes 2 seconds to create that. Well, what about Visual Studio? What does it give me, right? Well, it already gave me this, so I don't have to do any of that stuff, right? Here's one thing I want you to do for Visual Studio. See this meta character set is underneath the title? I want you to take my meta character set and put this, like cutting it, and putting it on top of my title like this. Meta character set UTF-8. Here's what I want you to do if you're working with Visual Studio or Code, VS Code, is type meta, and then the next one is going to be name is equal to viewport, and then content, oops, if I can spell, content is equal to width is equal to device width, initial scale 1. And I'm going to pop this out so you can see it. I'm going to unpin this one. And I'm going to just drag this a little bit further down so you can see the whole page, right? That's what it looks like right now. All right, those are the two meta tags. Meta tags tell the page, it's almost like control tags for the page. It tells the browser what to do. UTF-8 is really important. The other one I do is HTML. I want to change my language preference to English because we're in an English-speaking country right now. This would be something else if you were somewhere else. If it was key to another language like French or, I don't know, Italian or something else. You can, but I would recommend just leaving it like this for now. So if I was to do that here, just to fix this up, it'll be language is equal to English. And for the meta tags, it would be, again, for those people who missed it, meta. What I do is character set is equal to UTF-8, right, which is the standard character set that we use. And our meta tag for our viewport is name is equal to viewport, for those people who missed it. And content is equal to width is equal to device dash width. So we're looking at the device width, and then initial scale, sorry, I missed that. Initial scale is equal to 1, which basically says, don't scale my page and make sure that it'll reflow differently on a mobile device, right? Okay, good. My title for this one is going to be COMP125 lesson 2. COMP125 lesson 2. All right, I want to put a comment in here, all right, whether it's on Visual Studio or on my VS Code, where it's going to say CSS section. This is my first comment that I'm putting in here. I could also put some comments about me. I'm going to do that in a second too. So CSS section is going to be the comments. You can see how that works almost exactly the same, right? There is no real difference at this point or advantage, right? And I also want to put a comment. I don't have an H1 tag. An H1 tag, here's what it looks like on Visual Studio to do Zen coding. If you have Visual Studio with VS Web Essentials, Visual Studio Web Essentials, which I pointed out to you last time, right? With Visual Studio, to get the same effects as you can with other editors, now you need VS Web Essentials. And I would recommend, like I said, with Visual Studio with Update 2. Otherwise, you won't see what I see. So VS Web Essentials, if you haven't downloaded this extension for Visual Studio, if you're a Visual Studio person, download it. It's very useful. It also gives you something called Zen coding, which is very similar to the shortcuts I get through Emmet, right, in my ID. So example here, I go H1, and in my H1 tag, I can say hello world, just like I did with Visual Studio Code. And if I click tab, then I get that same idea, right? On the bottom of this, what I want you to do is go do another little section here that says JavaScript section. We're going to do some JavaScript too, right? Okay, cool. So save. And over here, I'm going to do the same thing with my stuff. I'm going to say JavaScript section. And save. Right? So I've got my stuff. Let's put some stuff in my contents and everything else, because I'm going to need some other things to link to. In my CSS section, I want to link to my contents, my custom CSS, right? I'm going to put in my page, right? I haven't done that yet, but I will. I'm going to right-click here. And what I want to do, actually, not right-click. I want to just type in link, because that's how we do CSS. I'm going to press tab, right? And when I do that, it gives me the link. But I don't have something to link to yet in my content. I'm going to right-click over my content and go New File. And my new file is going to be called app.css, app for application. We're also going to make a little comment here that says, you know, custom CSS goes here. We don't have anything there yet. It's just empty. And we're going to also save. But I want to link it to my page, because I want you to always remember that the index.html page acts as a manifest for everything else. It ties all the other stuff together, your CSS and your JavaScript. If your JavaScript isn't linked to your page, it's useless. It doesn't exist as far as your page is concerned. So how do I link it? Well, I need to put the path of my app.css, and sometimes it's hard to remember. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to right-click on my app.css, and in Visual Studio Code, you can click Copy Path. I'm going to go back to my index.html, and I'm going to right-click. I'm going to kind of click into there so I can position my cursor in there. I'm going to right-click and paste. Now I'm going to modify this, because I don't need all this. This doesn't make any sense, right? I just need content. So if you just kill everything else here and just put content, this is the path, content/app.css. And you can type it yourself, but sometimes we'll find that it's a lot faster for us to do what I just did than type it by yourself. And less finger typing errors, right? You're not going to make an error typing. All right, so we got our style sheet linked. That's good. Let's do the same thing for our scripts. So I'm going to right-click on our scripts, do a new file. This is our script file, app.js. Here's my app.js. And here I want to do a couple things. I want to say, this is our main JavaScript file now. And remember when we started off, when we do a JavaScript file, how do I want you to, what structure did I show you last time that I want you to always use? Huh? A what? Yes, but I mean, I give you a structure to do your console.log last day. Yes. So what's the function? What's that thing called? It's a special structure. I'm going to test you on this on Wednesday. What's the structure? Was it IIFE, right? IIFE. What does it stand for? IIFE. Come on, come on, come on. There we go. Immediately invoked function expression. Immediately invoked, or an anonymous, self-executing function, or a closure, which some people like to call it, right? Let's do this. So we're going to make our IIFE, right? Which is a immediately invoked function expression. By the way, the other class won't be doing this, but that's okay. I want you to understand this from day one, right? Because it's important. All right, and how does it go? I put brackets first, my function, which is a keyword for all functions. We're going to talk about functions today and next day. Then another set of brackets. Usually you put, in functions, you put parameters in there, right? And then curly braces, which is the curly braces talk about the block, my code block, or my function block, executable block. And then I keep skipping over till the end. And then, this is the funky part, I put 2 more open and closed braces, all right, parentheses, and a semicolon. That is my immediately evoked function expression. Now, this isn't enough. I got to put my code in between these 2 curly braces, right? So I'm going to make some spaces. Right? And this is where my code goes in here. I'm going to put that in there for you guys to remember. So it says code goes here. Code goes in here, right? This is where the code goes, right? Just so you guys remember. Cool. And something else I want to introduce today, I want to use a new thing called use strict. I want you to do that too. This is actually, it's a command. It's an executionable command, right? On line 5, this use strict, what it does is it says, hey, don't let me assign variables. Remember I talked about variables? How loosely typed everything is last day? Very, very loose. We're going to talk about that again today, right? Use strict makes it so that I can't assign something that I've already assigned an integer to, or like I don't know, a string or something else. It'll stop me. It'll give me an error. Okay, cool. So we got use strict, right? And some code goes here. I'll make another little space here so it's more illustratable, right? And maybe something like, let's put some code there. Console.log, right? App started, which is what I wanted to put in for now. We kind of did this last day, but I'm repeating myself so you see how this all works, okay? Okay, cool. Instead of typing this all again, guys and girls, I'm just going to grab this whole thing, copy it, I'm going to drag it over to this, right? And I'm going to use it over here now. Okay, so let's go to Solution Explorer, and we're going to do the same thing with Visual Studio Code, Visual Studio. For those people who want to use this, right-click on Content. I'm going to add in a new style sheet. I'm going to call this app.css, and instead of the body tag, I just want to put in, like I said before, custom styles. Go here, right? And save. That's my app.css. That's not connected yet, but I will. And in my scripts folder, I'm going to right-click. I'm going to add another file, which is a JavaScript file this time. And it's going to be called app.js. And this is where I'm going to copy and paste. So I'm going to kind of right-click and paste. And you're going to see that all the stuff that I got from my other stuff is here. It works nicely. Save. No difference there, right? Now I need to link everything into my index.html. And because I'm using Visual Studio, it's a lot easier. I can just go take my app.css and drag it over here, puts it in, and here's my app.js, drag it over here, and it's done. Drag and drop. Okay. I'll be honest with you, this is one feature I really miss from Visual Studio that I don't have in Visual Studio Code. There's a lot more manual stuff like I do in Visual Studio Code, but it's good to learn these things because then you're stronger at it. Hey, I didn't link my scripts, my app.js, I didn't link this into my Visual Studio Code side. I only just did this. Let's do that. So I'm going to go index.html. Notice that it's missing. For me, I got to do the same thing. I go to script, and then I got to do a source. And source, I got to put in there. Remember, I'm going to do this. I'm going to right-click on my app.js, copy the path. This is the fast way. Put your cursor in between these 2 quotation marks, and then paste. And I want to take all this personal stuff out, users, Thomas, desktop, blah, 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 and just put in scripts. So that's where it is. And if you notice, if I save this path are identical, whether I drag and drop or whether I type it myself. So, by the way, if I was wrong and I dragged and dropped from here, then this would be different. And I'm not wrong, right? So I've typed it correctly. Let's test our code, right? Because we have a hello world, and I want to make sure that we say app started, right? I want to be able to do that. So to test your code in Visual Studio Code, I'm going to right-click here. Let's right-click here. And we're going to open in a find in folder or find in Explorer if you're using Windows, right? And, oops, let's try this again. I meant reveal in Explorer. That's what I meant, which is going to bring up my files. Here it is, COMP125 lesson 2. And if I double-click on my index.html, because it's just a simple index.html file, there's no real functionality here, it should bring up my browser, and I can see hello world. If I right-click into and inspect, like we did last time, you can see the console. Here's the console that says app started. So we know our JavaScript is linked to our code. That's very important, okay? Let's go back over here. Let's try it over here. There's two ways to do it here with Visual Studio. One, you can click this button, or you can press Control F5, which runs without debugging. Notice here, debug. It says you can run without debugging, start without debugging, but to Control F5, or you can press F5, or you can click on this button here, right? So let's do Control F5, so run without debugging. And what it's going to do is going to bring up my Internet Information Services mini web server, which is on the bottom. And this is where there's an advantage for Microsoft, because it's like simulating a real web server right here. And if I was to right-click and go inspect, you can see that there is on the console, forget this failed start. This is just because we don't have a favicon. App started, so it's exactly the same. Okay, let's make two projects up on GitHub. One that's going to be called COMP125 Lesson 1 VS Code, and one that says COMP125 Lesson 2 Visual Studio. And so I'll have both projects up on GitHub, different ways. Okay, so you've seen it both ways this time. Okay, just to solidify this whole GitHub thing, so we don't have any more GitHub issues. So how do I do it here in VS Code? In VS Code, there's a couple ways. If you've got in Windows or on the Mac, if you've got Git installed, notice that there's some buttons here on the left-hand side. If I click this Git button, this is what this GitHub is. It's built in, right? You should see initialize Git repository. If you don't see this, that means Git is not installed properly on your command line, okay? And you can't do it from here. In fact, you're probably going to have to use the desktop tool, which I talked about before, which you can get, like last time, just as a review, from desktop.github.com, right? We can download a desktop tool to do it for you, to create your Git repository remotely. And it'll also give you something called Git Bash, right? Another little tool. Actually, I'll show you on Windows, on the Windows side for a second. It's actually called Git Shell, right? Where Git Shell allows you to do all your Git commands in there. And all you need to do for Git Shell is double click onto it. When you open it up, when it opens up, you've got to navigate to where your project is. So let's say I don't know where my project is here, but I want to navigate to it. Give it a second. Unknown. Okay. So let's say I want to see where my project is here in Visual Studio for a second. I'm going to use Visual Studio as an example, okay? And I want to navigate to this project. I want to right-click here on Visual Studio, and I'm going to say Open Folder in File Explorer. All right, there's my project. There it is. I know I'm taking a little extra time doing this, but I want to make sure that everyone knows how to do this. Here's my project in File Explorer, right? Here it is. COMP125 Lesson 2. Notice that I have a invisible Git folder. This is the reason why it's grayed out like this, is because it's supposed to be invisible, right? But I've shown all files and folders on Windows side, right? And if I minimize this for a second, and if I want to get to my COMP125 Lesson 2 through my Git shell manually, I can do that by typing the following: CD, which means change directory, right? And all I need to do is drag and drop in Windows from here to my Git shell, and it'll give me the exact path to get to my folder, right? And then I just have to press Enter, return, right? And now I'm in there. Notice that there's some changes that I made, but I'm actually inside that folder, right? So whether you're doing it through Windows and you don't have Git support, or whether you did it through, right through Visual Studio Code. Let me show you Visual Studio Code for a second. Let's suppose you do have you've installed everything properly on Windows or Mac and it works right. I can just initialize my Git repository right here. Click. It's done. I initialized it, right? And then from here, notice that there's some changes, right? I want to add these into the staging area. Remember that for Git, I want to bring up an example of this, please, just because some of you may have forgotten. I'm going to bring up my downloads. And here's my Git. I'm going to bring up my Git picture that we used for downloads last time, just to remind you all how it works, right? Y'all. Here's my work folder. When I do a git add dot I add everything to the staging area. This is the second stage, right? And then when I make a commit, right? So git commit minus M for message, right? And I name the message. I name the snapshot. I create a friendly name for the snapshot, and it pushes everything into the repo, which is invisible normally. And then when I do a git push, right? Minus U, right? Origin master for the first time, it pushes it to the Git repository on the cloud. Right now, we don't have a Git repository in the cloud. We want to make sure that our local repositories are running well. Already on Windows, it's done. We're going to talk about on Visual Studio how it works in a second. Let's do it on VS Code first. So here in VS Code, go back. Notice how there's changes here. If I click this button on the top, I can also click individual files. But if I click this button on the top, it's going to add all my files as new files to add to my staging area. So we click plus. Now they become A for ads. These all get added into my staging area. The code here changes, right? Now I get to put a unique message, not really unique, it's going to be initial commit, right? And when I put the initial commit in here and I click this checkbox, whatever you want to call it, it's staged everything locally, right? Now normally, if I click on this ellipses, I can't do anything else because I haven't set up a remote. But I will in a second. You'll see how this is going to work. Okay. Let's skip back to Visual Studio to get to the same level. Visual Studio. So I'm not here anymore. I don't need this part. I just wanted to show you this part so you can get there if you had a problem with command prompt. Okay. But if you notice here in Visual Studio, right? I want to see my Team Explorer. There's a Team Explorer window on the bottom of Visual Studio. Here it is. And notice that if I click Changes, right, I have a bunch of stuff that needs to be staged. This is Visual Studio 2015, right? Very similar to what I had before. I'm going to click the plus button. When I click the plus button, everything gets staged. Now, normally if you have Visual Studio 2013, you won't have that. You'll just have a bunch of changes here. And then you put a commit message, which is initial commit, and click commit stage. Okay, cool. Now we're both at the same level. By the way, if you didn't have, just to go back to what I did before, if you couldn't do that stuff because your Git isn't installed properly on your machine and you're not able to do the stuff with Visual Studio Code and you want to use Visual Studio, again, what I recommend is right-click and then go to Open Folder in File Explorer for a second just to demonstrate this, right? Or in VS Code, what you would do is you would open in File Explorer and you get something like this too, right? And then what you want to do is bring up Git shell, just to show you this one more time so you're not confused. One day with my Git shell response, there we go. And remember, whether you're on Mac or in Windows, you can always drag and drop a folder like this, right? So if I'm here, oops, and if I go CD and space, and then I drag and drop my folder in here, you can see that I'm going to get my exact, I press enter, and I'm in the exact same space. Now it says master. If I do if I did all the commands, it would be like this: git add dot. That would be all the commands. By hand, you have to do this by hand. I'll press enter, and then I would say git commit minus M, and then initial commit. That's what the next command would be. Press enter, and then after that's done, you would say you're at the same point as I am, right? Whether you're doing it by command line, Visual Studio Code, it's all the same now. All right, we're at the same level. Let's leave this up. Let's go back to Visual Studio Code, and let's, on the Mac side, I'm going to create 2 repositories here on GitHub. So I'm going to go to GitHub. Let's do the repository together, ladies and gentlemen. We'll stop for a break. This is my repository, and I want to make 2 of them, right? I'm going to add plus, new repository, and inside this repository name, I'm going to make the first one. It's got to be under my Centennial College. Here it is. And the first repository is going to be called COMP125 lesson 2, right? And we'll say VS Code, in capital letters. VS Code. Yay, we know this one's for Visual Studio Code. And we'll leave it blank for now. Okay, now we'll do the next one. Plus, your repository. Make sure that it's in your own repo. And I'll do the same thing. COMP125. Press 2. VS Visual Studio, right? Visual, I'll make all this. Visual Studio. A little different, right? Visual Studio for Visual Studio, Visual Studio Code for VS Code, right? Okay, cool. So I want to load them up into those different places. Let's go back into the first one first. So I want to go into VS Code. Here's VS Code. And I want to grab the last two lines. The last two lines here. You have to do this for VS Code. You have no choice for the first time. You got to grab these last two lines, copy them, go back into your terminal, right? Now, let me go into the terminal that makes sense. The terminal for that you had up for VS Code, which is this one, right? You're going to right-click here, open in terminal if you have access, if it's set up correctly, and right-click paste, or sorry, paste for a Mac, right-click paste for Windows, press Enter. And what it's going to do is, if you're set up properly with GitHub, it may ask you to log in, but it's going to sync up your local repository here with your remote. And if I was to go back up to Visual Studio, to GitHub and refresh, you can see now that the VS Code one is done. Right? Let's take a look at Visual Studio Code, or Visual Studio. Sorry. Here's Visual Studio. Notice that it's blank like this again. By the way, I didn't add a README file, a license, or anything else. Please don't add those things. It'll block you from doing things properly. Okay? Okay, so I want to do instead of doing the last two lines now in Visual Studio, it's much easier. All I need is this, right? So I'm going to click this one, copy this whole line here to the clipboard. I'm going to go back to Visual Studio. I don't need this. Go back to my Visual Studio. And in Visual Studio, I'm going to go to Team Explorer. I'm going to click on Home. I'm going to go to Sync. And one day when my thing syncs up, if you've set everything up properly, I'm not going to choose this one for my Visual Studio 2015. I can, but I won't. I'm going to choose one that looks like this. There's going to be a little line, a little yellow search field. Put it in here. Paste in the yellow search field. And then click Publish. When you do this, it'll publish everything up to GitHub. And if you notice now, if I refresh on GitHub, you can see that I have both repositories here up on GitHub. There's a difference between the two. Let's take a look at the difference. Okay, I'm going to kind of put up GitHub here for a second too. But GitHub, I want to look at the two repositories side by side because I want you guys to see what the difference is between one and the other. Here's VS Code, and here is Visual Studio. Do you see a difference? Notice that Visual Studio doesn't have my index.html exposed, whereas VS Code does. This is considered compatible with any host provider out there. It'll work with the school provider. It'll work with anywhere else. If you try and put this like this, the way it is, up to the school provider, it will not give you it will not work. It will give you an error because the school provider needs you to actually see this. This is what you need to show on the school provider. One folder inside the other one. And the reason why is because we always need index.html to be exposed on the root, just like this one. Now, there's a bunch of extra stuff here. And these extra things are because of Visual Studio. Visual Studio adds additional information because you can make different kinds of projects. An example of this would be a web forms project with ASP.NET or an ASP.NET MVC project. We're not doing that, but it gives me the information anyway. And if you want Visual Studio to work on Azure, leave those files alone. So this way, when I click on Visual Studio, notice that it's this. I don't expose everything, but I can still sync up with Azure, which I'm going to do now. Let's finish off. Let's create two. I'm going to create two containers up on Azure, one for VS Code and one for Visual Studio, and both of them are going to work. Let's go to portal.azure.com. And I'm going to click on plus for new. I'm going to click web and mobile. This is my first one. I'm going to click web app. And notice that it should say DreamSpark for you just like it says for me. Right? I fixed mine. And it says new resource group. I could choose a new resource group. I'm going to choose Canada East because I've kind of set up Canada East as a resource group. That's okay, right? And I'm going to leave it at Canada East. I'm going to pin this to the dashboard and click create, but I need a name for it, and it's going to be called COMP125 to make a difference. Summer of 2016, lesson 2, and then VS Code, right? So lots of impossible for that name to be the same as everyone else. it's going to go doing its deployment dance. Okay, so it's going to get this deployment dance done, right? This is, again, we're talking about this because it's important for us to be able to deploy live to a site for testing, because what we do locally and what we do remotely, right, has to match. When we do local testing, we've got to keep in mind remote, what it's going to look like on the remote, right? And this is here up on Visual Studio, on Azure. If I scroll down here and I go to deployment source, I can choose GitHub. So I'm going to go to configure required settings. I'm going to choose GitHub. I'm going to choose, instead of my Sinopoulos account, I'm going to choose my Centennial College account. Under my project, I'm going to choose VS Code, this one. This is what this thing is called, right? VS Code. This is my app. I'm going to choose VS Code as my project. And then I'm not going to choose anything else and just press OK. If everything goes well, it's going to take stuff from GitHub and spill it into the container at Azure, so I can host my files up at Azure, Microsoft Azure. I'll let that deploy for a second, and I'll test it 2 seconds, and then we'll do the one for Visual Studio. And then we'll take a break, finally, right? And we'll get to the other stuff. Why am I doing all this again? Because sometimes it's good to see it yet again, another time, right? Just to make sure that everyone's clear on all the requirements here. Right? If you don't do this a bunch of times, you don't see it a bunch of times. If you only seen it once, you really don't learn it, right? You need to practice it over and over again. This is another time to practice. By the way, I will be asking you to do this on an exam, right? Deploy to the live site. You know, go up to GitHub. So if you don't do this now, and when we're in an exam situation, you're gonna be in trouble, right? Because you won't have time. That's what it is. It's not because you don't know. If you haven't practiced, you don't have time to do it. You're gonna make mistakes if you look it up all the time. Okay, it's deployed. Let's test it out. See this little check mark? It tells me I'm good. I'm going to just check it out by clicking on this link. And we can see that it's deployed. I'm going to right-click and click Inspect. And notice that it still gives me this really weird thing because it's looking for a favicon, but my app has started. So my JavaScript is working. And this is for the VS Code one, right? VS Code. Let's do one more. So I'm going to click plus for new, right? If you're a Visual Studio person, I'm going to go Web and Mobile. I'm going to click on Web App. And I'm going to rename it this way. So I'm going to say COMP125, Summer of 2016, Lesson 2, and Visual Studio. All one word. And we're going to choose, again, I'm going to choose Canada East. I've set that up from last time. Pin to my dashboard and press Create. So now I've got another container up here. Again, using Dreamswap. As many as I want. I'll show you that later. I don't want to waste lesson 1 yet because some people won't be using it still. Yes. It is. Just a second. I'll get back to that in a second. Let me finish this one off, and I'll go. It's going to be this. It's going to be COMP125-S2016- Lesson 2-VS Code. That's what it'll be. Yeah. Okay, so now I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to go deployment. I'm going to go down to, scroll down to where it says on the right-hand side, right? So if you notice there's publishing. Under publishing, I'm going to click deployment source, right? This time I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to configure settings. I'm going to choose GitHub, right? And then when it goes to GitHub, I'm going to choose, instead of me, it's going to be Centennial College. Under my project type, I'm going to choose Visual Studio this time, right? For the different one, it's all the same. And press OK. No difference here. Yes? Here? It's out of scope for the course. If I did that, I would spend a lot of time that you could be learning JavaScript. So I would love to, but I can't. I don't have time. Even what I'm doing here, guys, is out of scope for what I'm doing for the course. I'm doing it because I feel it's super important for you to know GitHub and Visual Studio Code and Azure. Lots of stuff, and this is all new stuff, right? So once I'm showing you to a couple times, so that way you don't say, Tom showed us only one time, and they gave us an assignment in a lab, and you killed it, right? Not fair. So now you've seen it a couple times, and it's recorded, so you can always go and look at different recordings. Say, how did you do it that time? Well, he did it differently this time, or he did it like this time, and then you know how to do it. Like I did it a little differently with VS Code, because on VS Code I add the buttons, and I use the GitHub that's built into VS Code now, right? Which is not what I did last time. Ooh. It's deployed. Let's see if it works. Remember, we don't have anything exposed in the root, but Microsoft loves Microsoft, so it should work. So if I click on this and press Command or Control click, I should be able to see this. I do. And if I go to inspect, I should be able to see the same thing as last time. If I go to console and refresh, you can see that the error goes away and I see my app.js. Guys and girls, this is a great place to stop. We've done from birth to deployment. We've done our app right now. It's very simple. It's a stupid little app we did, right? But you've done everything. You've done all the steps. GitHub up to Azure, the whole step, right? Let's pause here. This is a great place to pause, and we'll add some more stuff when we come back, talk about JavaScript, okay? And by the way, the next time we get together, next day, which is Wednesday, we'll have a little quiz, but then we'll get right into JavaScript again. So we won't have to create a new application. We have 2 of them up we can work with, right? So we won't have to do this again. And next time we do this, I'm not going to do the new application from scratch. I'm going to pick a template, one of the other ones, lesson 2 or whatever, and we're going to work from there. So we don't have to do this again and again and again. It's going to be too much, right? We're going to waste too much time. So let's just do it this time around, and it's a good place to stop.